God, today we are hungry for your word. God, today we are hungry for the working of your Spirit in our lives. God, I pray that the seed of the gospel would bear fruit 30, 60, and 100-fold to us in Jesus' name. And all God's people said, amen. Open with me to the gospel according to Mark chapter 5. We're going to start in verse 24. I got a sermon for you today called Encountering Jesus. Anybody want to encounter Jesus this morning? Mark chapter 5, starting in verse 24, says, Jesus went with him, and a great crowd followed him and thronged about him. And there was a woman who had a discharge of blood for 12 years, and who had suffered much under many physicians, and had spent all she had, and was no better, but rather grew worse. She had heard the reports about Jesus and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his garment. For she said, if I touch even his garments, I will be made well. And immediately the flow of blood dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. And Jesus, perceiving in himself that power had gone out from him, immediately turned about in the crowd and said, who touched my garments? And his disciples said to him, you see the crowd pressing around you, and yet you say, who touched me? And he looked around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease. So really crazy story here. Sometimes I think about those of us who've heard these stories, multiple times. Some of you who have been in church a little while, you're familiar with the story of the woman who pushed through the crowd and touched Jesus' clothes and was healed. But man, when I think about this story, it's like actually crazy, okay? I've seen God do some miracles in my life. I've prayed for people and sometimes they get healed. Now, I'm not gonna say it happens all the time, but I've seen it, I've lived it. But never in my life has someone touched my clothes and I accidentally healed somebody. That's crazy to me. That is wild to me. That Jesus here, he's not just like some of the great Old Testament prophets, like Elijah or Elisha who did these crazy miracles. Jesus isn't even trying. He's looking the wrong direction. He doesn't even know who touched him. And the lady didn't even touch him. She touched the end of his garment. Power shoots out of him. This 12-year disease that no doctor could heal is immediately cured. And Jesus just feels like, man, power just left my body. What a story. What power. But before we talk about the woman here, I want to point out to you something that maybe seems too obvious, that maybe seems like it's so obvious we just overlook it. And it's that there's this massive crowd swarming around Jesus. And the thing about Jesus is that everywhere he goes, people are pressing in to reach out and touch him. That everywhere he goes, everybody wants to know him. Everybody wants to see him. Everybody wants to talk to him. And I have this idea. I have this thought here that Jesus, as I read the Gospels, Jesus was compelling. He was drawing. He was irresistible to people. And I have this idea still today that Jesus is still compelling. And when the real Jesus is in the room, people will come and people will be changed. You see, sometimes preachers in the church today feel this pressure to like make the gospel cool and make the gospel relevant and make the church attractive to younger people today. But I believe in the bottom of my heart that Jesus is still compelling all by himself because it's who he is as the Son of God. It's who he is as Jesus of Nazareth. You see, we want to do all sorts of things to make our building welcoming and have fun events, and we want to do things to invite the community, and all of that stuff matters. But if Jesus is not in the room when we gather, then why are we here? And if he's here, everything changes. You see, Jesus is compelling to people in need. He's compelling to hurting and broken people. And the reason this woman came was because it says in Mark that she heard the reports about Jesus. That she heard what Jesus had done. What Jesus had done for somebody else gave her faith for herself. But you see, this woman, it had been 12 years. 12 years. With this flow of blood. Now, none of the men in the room can relate to that, but imagine for the women here, I mean, that's like crazy. We don't know what the disease was. Jesus said it was some kind of disease that he said, be healed from it. And so this woman has this intense physical problem. But as is often the case, physical problems lead to financial problems. Right? Anybody ever get that bill from the doctor? Some of you were like, Joey, I feel that. I heard like a grumbling in the room right there. It says she spent all she had and was no better, but actually got worse. Who knows what the doctors were doing 2,000 years ago? Right? Like, we don't know what they were doing, but listen, even the best doctors today, that there's limits to our power. There's only so much that we can do. There's only so much that's within our ability. And so this woman has this physical condition. And now, because it's been decades, over a decade, she's spent all she has and now she's worse. So now it's a physical problem, it's a financial problem, and guess what? It's even worse than that. Because in the Old Testament law, there were certain stipulations about being clean or unclean. Anybody read the book of Leviticus out there? If you're struggling to sleep at night, if you have insomnia, read Leviticus. If I'm allowed to say that about the Word of God. It's like a whole legal document, health code, all this stuff. Now in the law, in the Jewish law, there were these certain practices, certain things that would make a person unclean. Now to be unclean, it wasn't a sin, but it was a way of saying hey, sort yourself out before you join the community. So it's really more of a health code, and it has anything to do with bodily fluids for men or women. If you've been around a dead body, certain skin conditions, it was this understanding that take some time, sort yourself out, and then there's these rituals so you can be clean, go back in the community, fellowship in the presence of God, all this stuff. And so this woman here, imagine what is now 12 years because of her condition of being unclean. And when you're unclean, you can't go in the temple, you can't talk to a priest, you can't be around other people, because if I'm unclean, because I have some weird skin condition like leprosy, if I touch you, guess what? Not only are you at risk of getting leprosy, you're also unclean, and you can't go into the presence of God. So now there's a spiritual and a relational component. Imagine the weight of thinking I can't touch another human for 12 years. And so all these problems begin to compound in this woman's life, and it starts with this physical brokenness, and it begins to spiral into every area of her life, and no one could help her. And sometimes this is how life is, that you get to a point for whatever reason when nothing else is working, when you're out of options, when you're at the end of your rope. And so what does this woman do? She heard reports about Jesus. And she thought, if I can just touch the edge of his garment, I know I'll be made well. How did this woman get that kind of faith? I think this poor, sick woman has more faith in Jesus than I do. How did she get that kind of faith? Because she heard what Jesus did for somebody else. She heard the reports and she thought, man, if this Jesus, if these reports are real, I just gotta reach out. I just gotta touch the edge of his garment. And I want you to hear this morning, church. There will be people in this city who will not be changed because they read a theology book about who Jesus is. They will not be changed because they heard a podcast about Christology. You know when they'll be changed? When they hear about what Jesus has already done in your life. See, the Jesus story is not told in the abstract. The Jesus story is best told in the context of your story. And you don't have to preach. You don't need a microphone. You don't need a stage. You don't have to go on Facebook Live. All you got to do is look at some people in your life and begin to tell them what Jesus has done for you. And I will tell you right here today, if you will tell people what Jesus has done in your life, there'll be some people like the woman with the issue of blood who you thought would never be healed, who you thought would never be changed, who you thought would never be saved. All of a sudden, when they hear what he did for you, faith will begin to rise up in their own hearts. You don't have to have a degree in theology. You don't got to be an expert at public speaking. You just got to tell them what Jesus has done for you. There was a story in John 9. Jesus healed a guy that was born blind. And the Pharisees pull this guy in because they don't like Jesus, so they're interrogating him. What do you think about Jesus? Do you think he's the Messiah? They interrogate the guy who got healed. They interrogate the guy's parents. And you know what the blind guy says at one point? He says, I don't believe it. You're the teachers of Israel, and you don't understand this? Who from the foundation of the world has ever heard of a guy who was born blind being able to see? And then you know what he says? He says, whether he's a prophet or not, I don't know. But here's what I do know. I once was blind, and now I see. See, did he have a degree in theology? No. Did he have everything figured out? But listen, he knew enough to say, I used to be blind and I'm not blind anymore. So he must be somebody. Tell your story. So you see this woman, she gets to a point in her life where she's heard what Jesus did for other people, but now she needs an encounter for herself. And I want to say this to you today, for many of you who are in the room, who would say, Joey, I've heard what Jesus has done as I read the Gospels, or I've heard it preached. I've heard what Jesus has done for other people in this room. But let me tell you, there comes a point in your life, there will come a trial, there will come a storm, there will come a battle where the only solution is for you to encounter Jesus for yourself. And you cannot live on somebody else's moment with Jesus. You cannot live on somebody else's encounter with Jesus. At some point, you've got to go beyond watching from a distance, hearing from a distance, and you got to press in to lay hold of Christ. See, some of us, hear me, church, some of us are content watching from a distance. We're content to ride on what somebody else has told us about Jesus. And so we'll watch from a distance, we'll see what happens, we'll hear the stories, but we ourselves never get close enough to the place of encounter. Let me tell you, you can't coast on my relationship with Jesus. You can't coast on your spouse's relationship with Jesus, on your parents, on your kids' relationship with Jesus. At some point, you've got to get to a place where you say, I don't care what happens in my life. I want to press on and lay hold of Christ no matter what it costs, no matter what it looks like, no matter what I got to rearrange. I'm pressing on to lay hold of Jesus Christ for my own life. You gotta get this thing in your heart that's like, man, Joey's cool, and these people over there are cool, and they got their walk with Jesus, but man, I need something for myself. I wanna see him, I wanna know him. And some of us, listen, in church, we can go years and decades watching Jesus from a distance. Jesus turned around and said, who touched me? You know what the apostles said? Lord, everyone's touching you. Like, the crowd is all around you. Everyone's pushing in. You have to imagine a little bit of like the disciples' confusion and frustration. Is Jesus slipping? What do you mean? Who touched you? And yet Jesus realized there was a touch that made a withdrawal. See, there's a difference, church, hear me. There's a difference between being around Jesus, in the room with Jesus, in the crowd with Jesus, and a touch that makes a withdrawal of power from Jesus. You can touch him and not touch him. You can bump into him in the crowd and he's in the room and we all see him and you don't encounter him. Hear this, you can be in a room, I've been in services where I've watched other people encounter the glory of God in a way that changed their life and I was just standing there. There's something about pushing through that's not just following from a distance, watching from a distance. You know what it's called when you follow from a distance? Stalking. And you're creeping Jesus out. Stop it. Like you're just cool, like lurking from the shadows. Like at some point you gotta go beyond like, oh, I just watched that guy over there, to an encounter, to a touch, to a moment that changes everything. And you see, I've been feeling this in my heart the last few weeks, just to share with you what God's saying to me, what God's saying to Joey, is that it's so easy, especially if you've been in church a while, it's so easy to just go along with the crowd. And Jesus is just this nice idea out there. He's just this practice of good habits or this doctrine in your head, and you and I never quite get to that place of encounter. I'm asking you to press in this morning. I'm asking you to reach out and touch him this morning. Let me reread verses 29 through 34 again. It says, immediately the flow of blood dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. Immediately. And Jesus, perceiving in himself that power had gone out from him, immediately turned about in the crowd and said, who touched my garments? And the disciples said to him, you see the crowd pressing around you, and yet you say, who touched me? And he looked around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease. This is amazing to me. You get the sense when you read the Gospels that Jesus is like charged, like supercharged. That Jesus does not, like you and me praying for somebody, try to access the life of God, the power of the Spirit. That he himself is the power source. That he himself is like this crazy power. That she could touch him, his clothes, and she could immediately do what no doctor could do in 12 years and heal her. And you have to know here, this isn't like placebo in her mind. This isn't a magic trick. This isn't some sleight of hand. This isn't distract you over here while something else happens. It's like from his clothes immediately, like there's a withdrawal of power. And when you read the Gospels, you come to understand that Jesus is not like any other human. that he's actually the very glory of God veiled in flesh. He's the very glory and power of God in a human body. And so that when someone reaches out in faith, something happens. That this is the one who John said in John 1, in the beginning was the Word, Jesus. And he was with God and he was God in the beginning. And John says in verse 14 of chapter 1, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we saw his glory. The glory of the one and only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. And from his fullness, we've received grace on top of grace. That from Jesus, there's like this fullness that's overflowing, this fullness that's bursting out of him, that he's the very glory of God in a human body. And we see actually a moment where the veil is lifted on the Mount of Transfiguration. Some of you know the story. Jesus goes up on the mountain in the middle of the night, all-night prayer meetings, Jesus style, and he brings Peter, James, and John. And they were doing what most of us would be doing in an all-night prayer meeting, which was sleeping. You ever fell asleep in church? You're in good company. Peter, James, and John, they're with you. Peter wakes up because he sees a light. He wakes up because he sees a light. And guess what? It's not the sunrise. It's Jesus. And he's radiating. It says his clothes were so white, they were whiter than any person on earth could make them. That Jesus was dazzling, shining, brilliant with the light of the sun. And there's this understanding that like, man, we saw who he really is. We saw his glory. We saw his majesty. And this woman here, this poor, broke woman with nothing, alone, no recourse, no option in the world, there's a touch where this messed up woman with no hope, sick, broken, bound, that woman touches Jesus and encounters the glory of God. And it says here that as Jesus turned and said, "Who touched me?" she became afraid. She came in fear and trembling. Think about this for a minute. Think about if you were this woman and you touched some kind of celebrity out in public. They would turn and be like, "Who touched me? Why are you grabbing my clothes? Get off me." Like, that's a rude thing to do. Now, if Jesus didn't heal her and he said, "Who touched me?" Well, he's angry. But if you touch him and he heals you accidentally, and then he turns and says, "Who touched me?" that's even scarier. Because if he can accidentally heal me, he could probably really hurt me on purpose if he wanted to. Imagine like the awe, the amazement that like, I just touched his robe and my 12-year disease is healed. And now he's looking at me, looking at the crowd, saying, "Who did it?" You talk about fear and trembling. But here's what I want to capture for you today. Here's what I want you to feel today. Hear me, church. A real encounter with Jesus will change you. A real encounter with Jesus will give you a little bit of fear and a little bit of trembling. And it's not the kind of like terror because he's going to hurt you. Because that's not who Jesus is. What does he say? "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace." And you know why I love that? Because you know in the modern world, we know what happens when people get too much power, don't we? We don't trust politicians, celebrities, sometimes even pastors, because they abuse their power. And yet what I want you to see about Jesus is that he's raw, unlimited, absolute power. And yet what is his heart? It's overflowing with loyal love for a broken and sick woman. That's the Jesus that I worship. Does he have power? You better believe it. He has all of it. He's the glory of God in a human body. And yet when you reach out and touch him, what do you find? You find that power has not changed his heart, but down to his core, he's bursting with healing. He's bursting with redemption. He's bursting with love. That's the heart of Christ. He looks at her and he says, daughter, your faith has made you well. Be healed of your disease. And I want you to hear me this morning. I want you to hear this. Sometimes in the Christian life, we can over-prioritize our emotions. Listen, sometimes following Jesus is hard and doesn't feel good. Sometimes your alarm's gonna go off to wake up and pray, and you're not gonna feel like it. Sometimes doing the right thing instead of the wrong thing is not gonna feel good. But, put that aside for 1 minute. Put that to one side. You can't be led by your feelings, but there's no way to have a real encounter with Jesus and feel nothing. There was a healing that made her tremble. There was a touch that made her a little bit nervous. And I want to tell you this morning, some of you have gone months, years, decades, and you're just casual in the presence of God. You haven't encountered Him yet. You're still watching from a distance. Or maybe you did a long time ago, but you've forgotten about it. And listen, I know there's dry seasons. I know there's times when it feels like God's far away, but let me tell you something. There's something about a real touch from Jesus that'll make you tremble. There's a real touch from Jesus that'll make you be still in amazement before the God who healed you. There's something about a touch from Jesus that'll make you dance. There's a touch from Jesus that'll make you shout. And it's not about your personality. It's about a recognition that I used to be blind, but now I see. I used to have a moment for 12 years, a moment of weakness and brokenness, a moment of no doctor being able to heal me. But now I'm healed. Now I'm whole. And that'll make you run around the room. That'll make you lift your hands. That'll make you dance and shout and clap for joy because of what Jesus has done in your life. You got to hear this, church. Jesus, oh, we read the Gospels and it's like, then He did this, then He did that. Listen to me. If you can hear a sermon about Jesus or read in your Bible about Jesus and not feel a little bit of trembling, you haven't encountered Him yet. If you can be in this room when the worship team is singing Worthy of It All and you don't feel anything, you haven't encountered Him yet. And it's not the worship team's fault, it's that you haven't touched Him yet. Now again, I know there's dry times where He feels distant, times where He feels removed, but I'm telling you, you cannot meet the real Jesus and feel nothing. I heard a pastor say one time, imagine if you walked in the room and said that on the way here, you got ran over by a Mack truck. Nobody would believe you because you're still the same person. You don't get run over by a truck and get up the same. And yet all the time, we act like we've encountered Jesus and our hearts are still hardened in sin. We are calloused in the presence of God. We are disinterested in the things of the Spirit. We don't listen to His voice. We run after all the idols of this world. You haven't encountered Him yet. And listen, I'm not saying this as a rebuke, but as an invitation. Press in, reach out, touch the end of His garment. It's so easy to reduce Jesus to just a nice teacher. And I'm telling you, this is the one that John said is the only begotten Son of the Father. This is the one who has a fullness about Him, a life about Him. It's the glory of God in flesh. This is the one who takes a little boy's lunch and He feeds a multitude with it. And the next day when the crowd said, give us another piece of bread, He said, you don't get it. I am the bread. And whoever eats this bread will never be hungry again. This is the one who, when a storm comes, rebukes the storm and the wind and the waves obey. This is the one who reaches out and touches a leper and says, be clean. Because you see, when our uncleanness touches somebody else, they become unclean. But when our uncleanness touches Jesus, He doesn't become unclean, but He makes us clean. That His cleanness is stronger than all of our brokenness. His holiness is stronger than all of our sin and shame. This is the one that turns our water into wine. This is the one that looks at a man with a legion of demons and drives those demons out. This is the one who looks at Lazarus in the grave, dead for 4 days, and he says, Lazarus, come forth. And even the dead, when they hear the voice of the Son of God, begin to rise up out of their graves and they come alive again. Listen, you can't be casual about this Jesus. You don't get to be casual about this Jesus, that he's either the Son of God or he's not. He's either the very glory of God veiled in flesh or he's not. And I feel this burning in my heart for you today. Stop watching from a distance. Stop just being content, hearing about what he's doing in this person's life, in that person's life. Press in for yourself and lay hold of Christ. Lay hold of the one that loved you and gave himself for you. Galatians 2:20 says. Listen, church, there is a touch that'll make you tremble. There's an encounter that'll make you shout. There's something about this Jesus that he's unlike anything you've seen, anything you've known. And that's why again and again and again, I come back to the Word. I put on worship. I fast. I pray. Listen, it's not this legalistic thing of like, man, I gotta earn something. Hopefully God will like me if I do all the right stuff. You know why I do it? Because I need that touch. I've got areas of brokenness that I'm still working on. I've got some stuff that I'm still dealing with. There's stuff in my life that's outside of my control. And that's why every day, it's not because I'm trying to earn something. It's because I need a touch that'll change me. I need a touch that'll heal me. I need a touch that'll put me right again. Listen, you can be in church for years and decades and watch from a distance as Jesus touches somebody else. Did you know in this story, it's sandwiched in between another story? A guy's daughter died. Jairus said, Lord, come, my daughter's dying. On the way to the house, this woman interrupts Jesus and gets her breakthrough. She could have been content. Oh, it's Jairus' time. I don't want to disturb the family. He's on his way to a funeral or maybe to do some miracle. I don't want to disturb that family's time. And this woman, unclean, not even supposed to be in a crowd because she's going to contaminate everybody, pushes through the crowd and lays hold of Christ. That's the kind of faith I want. That's the kind of desperation I want. It's not content watching somebody else have a moment with Jesus, and thank God for that. But I got some stuff in my life, and I need him to come. I need him to move. This city needs him to move. And so listen, I'm asking for a few people today. I'm asking for a couple people who will say, Joey, I'll believe with you. Joey, I'll seek him with you. That we need a touch. I need it. You need it. This city needs it. This world needs it. And I don't care what happens. I don't care. Push somebody out of the way. I'm getting that miracle today. I'm getting that breakthrough today. This woman, I'm convinced, this poor, sick woman, I think she had more faith in Jesus than I do. But guess what? What this woman did became a movement. Watch this here, Mark 6, the next chapter. Mark 6:56. This is so cool. You'll see it on the screen. Wherever Jesus came, in villages, cities, or countryside, they laid the sick in marketplaces and implored him that they might even touch the fringe of his garment. And as many as touched it were made well. Where do you think they got that from? From a lady who believed for the impossible. From a woman who believed that Jesus would do something for her accidentally through his clothes that would change everything. And yet when Jesus did it for her, all of a sudden everybody's trying to touch Jesus' garment. You see, all it takes is one. All it takes is one person's faith that can inspire a generation to believe. All it takes is one person to begin to burn, and an entire city will begin to burn. And one woman's touch became a multitude's touch. As they reached out, it went to lay hold of his garment because she believed. See, it's not just about you. The ways that you and I encounter Jesus will become testimonies to a dying world, testimonies to a broken world. And we're gonna see people come and get saved and get baptized and get discipled and get changed because of what he does in you.